Hey YouTube, Tom Houston Photography here. I'm going to be re-reviewing my 16 to 35 millimeter VR f4 lens in this video because the first video I made on this lens, when I did my initial review of it, I didn't have a full frame camera and I hadn't used it that much. So now that I've used it quite a bit and have used it on a full frame camera, now that I have the D600, I thought I would do another review and share my thoughts now that I've used it more with a full frame camera. So this is a very good lens, very impressed with it overall. However, I will run through the list of things I have written down. So first off, it is very light in comparison to other f2.8 lenses. It is long, however it is still light, which is nice because I did carry this thing around a lot when I was in Southeast Asia, either in my backpack or physically carrying it around in my hand, taking pictures, and it didn't get to the point where it got too heavy to carry. Sometimes it was a little uncomfortable after carrying it around and hiking with it for like 12 hours. However, it is light enough that that's not that big of an issue, which is nice. The VR, most people say is useless because you should be using a tripod, and they said that as well about the 105 macro lens, the new one, and I say the same thing for both of them. Is I don't always have my tripod, and when I don't have my tripod, I don't want that to be a reason that I can't use this lens at a slower shutter speed. And this lens is actually very useful to have VR because I did find myself hiking around in like a rainforest when the sun isn't quite getting through the canopy, and therefore you have to use a slower shutter speed to still have a large depth of field. So it does come in handy. Also, if you've ever traveled around Southeast Asia, it does rain from time to time, so the weather isn't always amazing. So having a lens that does have VR does come in handy. It is very sharp. This is a very, very good lens. I used it pretty much at f8 to f11 the whole entire time in Southeast Asia, and I have no complaints with the photos whatsoever. The only thing that is one downfall, well, one or two negatives about the lens. One is it does have a lot of distortion. You can kind of compose your shots or zoom in a little so that you don't have as much distortion. However, there was a couple times when I was trying to do like time-lapse photography or trying to get a lot of the beach in a photo and then the horizon just completely bowed, which is a little annoying. However, that's what happens if you don't get the 14 to 24. And to move into that, the 14 to 24 is a spectacular lens. I've tried it out a couple times, and this lens is not quite at that level. However, this you can put filters on, which is a lot more useful to me for a couple of reasons. One is I just do it to simply protect the front of my lens, so I always have a filter on the front, which some people think is a good thing and a bad thing depending on who you ask. However, when I was being tucked around Cambodia, it got really dusty, and if I didn't have a filter on there, that would have been a little scary if I just had the front element of a very expensive lens just collecting sand and dust, because it's not the easiest thing to clean, and I wouldn't want to try to clean that in the field. If I scratch up the front of my filter, I don't really care. If I mess up the front of my very expensive lens, I would care. So I didn't see a single 14 to 24 on my travels. However, I did see a couple of these, the 16 to 35s, and I also saw a couple 24 to 70s. So I like this lens a lot because it does use filters, and I also have a Lee filter system, so big help. And I do know that you can have filters on the 14 to 24, however, it's like a couple $100 system and is quite large to fit on the front of that lens. One last thing about the camera, the lens that I will say is I did mention it does feel a little plasticky. The focus ring, as I believe I mentioned in my last video, doesn't inspire any confidence. It is pretty cheap and plasticky, and the zoom window focus distance thing really doesn't do anything. It's really, really small. There's not a big range of focus for the ring. However, that's not the point of the lens, so I really don't care. If I ever need to use this, I just set it to a little bit before infinity. That's all I need to do. But it is a very, very good lens, and I would highly recommend this lens. And it is very good on a full frame sensor. The distortion is a little annoying, however, that's to be slightly expected with a lens that wide. It is very light, it's very sharp. I find the VR useful. I find being able to use filters is very useful. Even though it is plasticky feeling, it is very sturdy. I did trust that thing to just be exposed to the elements and potentially knocked a couple of times during my travels. Nothing bad happened. The lens is fine. It handled the rain, the humidity, the dirt, dust. So overall, I would say it's a very good lens. I would highly recommend it. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will toss up a couple of photos I've taken with this lens up after this video as per usual. And again, you can follow my stuff on all of the links below, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Cheers.